We're officially live, so as I said before, if you have any questions, please just speak up and let me know or get my attention. You can use the group chat function over on the left side, and there is also a Q&A function that you can use to type in and have questions actually embedded into the video if you'd like to do that. But that's completely up to you. If you'd like, just get my attention, speak up if you have a question. There will be a Q&A section at the end for questions if you want to wait until then. As I was saying, I'm going to briefly cover the robot games section. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the core values and the project section. This is a very interesting challenge this year, and I think I've got some ideas and things like that that might help you get started there. We are also doing a new robot design process. We had a lot of issues with that, both from the teams and from our judges, and I want to make sure that gets clarified and streamlined a little this year. So I'm going to go over the new process to make sure everyone understands exactly what is required and how it's all going to work. And finally, I've got some helpful hints and some links in a Q&A section for you. Now, the team registration process. There are a couple different ways to do it, but I'm going to walk you through the official process that I think might be the easiest way of doing it. Hopefully by now you're familiar with the FLL information system. It's called TIMS, the Team Information Management System. Right here is the link if you need it. What you need to do, if you haven't already, is to go to this site and register yourself as a team coach. You can be a supervisor, a head coach, whatever title you prefer. Just understand that this is going to be the main account for your team using your email address. Once you have your account in TIMS, there's a big button that says Create Your Team. Click on that and you can get your team officially entered and registered. That's when you'll receive your official team number. What you want to do after that is ensure that you have the information for 2 coaches entered into the system. This year, FLL is doing a new screening process to ensure that everyone has a proper background to be an FLL coach, so they do go through a screening and background process to confirm that your coaches are okay. You're also going to want to send in your registration payment for the national tournament registration if you have not done that already. Finally, once your TIM system is all up to date, once you have your 2 coaches screened and confirmed, and your payment has been processed, you'll receive a new link to where you can actually order your field kit and materials if you have not done so already. If you guys have any questions about that process, please just let me know. Like I said, you can speak up now or use the group chat or the Q&A app on the Hangout system there if you'd like. Moving on. This right here is our field mat for this year. Our theme, like I said, is world class. I hope you've all had the chance to look at it. It would be great if you had the opportunity to watch the Robot Games video. If not, take a look at that because it will go into much more detail than I'm going into here and will be a big help in actually looking at the models and understanding how they all work. When I first saw this tournament table, I had some mixed feelings. If you've competed last year, you know that the Nature's Fury table was very colorful. There was a lot of images. It was very detailed. And our mat this year is almost plain. It doesn't have a background image or anything like that. But when you look at how the mat is set up, it has a technical elegance to it that I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how you guys handle that. You'll notice there are a lot of colored lines on this table. I can tell you right now that one of the most important skills you can develop is learning how to use that color or light sensor to be able to identify these colored lines as well as many of the different objects you'll see in the models. That will help you out a great deal in navigating around the mat and actually accomplishing these missions. You'll also notice that the background on the mat is very plain, white and gray. This is going to make it much easier to use your color sensors without interference. Something that I ran into a lot during the Nature's Fury tournament was teams using their color sensors to navigate, but they would have problems because the color sensor would be receiving interference from that colorful picture on the back. This one is very simple, so it should be very easy to calibrate your sensors this year. I'm going to go over each one of these models, tell you a little bit about what they do, maybe provide some strategy or scoring information there. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think you'll be better off developing your own strategies as a team and watching the actual Robot Games video. I'm going to start out right over here with this mission model. You can see my mouse over on the left side. This is called Opening Doors. It has a push bar handle. You push that handle down and it unlocks the door, allowing you to push it forward. This mission is a great example of benefit of the doubt. There is no restriction on how far you have to push that door. As long as you push the door visibly, you will get credit for that mission. So don't worry about it too much. Push the bar down, open the door with a good shove. Back here in the top left corner, this one is project-based learning. You'll notice on this mission board there are a lot of different loops. Right here is a long black rod that extends outward, right to this red line. What you want to do is gather up as many loops as you can and hang them on that black rod. You get 20 points for the first loop that hangs on the rod and 10 points for every loop after that. You'll notice you start out with a loop here in base. There's another loop on the board here, and there are several others in the mission models themselves. Next, I'll talk about this mission here. This is called the sports mission. It's one that you should really pay attention to the rules on. The idea here is that your robot goes behind this scoring line and launches this blue ball towards this goal. Now, something to pay a lot of attention to this year is your partial credit scoring. You get full points, 60 points, if you actually launch the ball from behind this line into the goal. However, you also get 30 points, which is a sizable amount of points just for launching the ball from behind these lines. So I highly recommend that all the teams attempt this mission, because you've really got a lot of slack on what it means to launch the ball. It doesn't even have to come close to the goal. As long as you catapult it or shove it in some way while you're inside this area, you'll get partial credit for this mission. If you can build a system that lets you get the ball into the net, that's great. But if not, remember, partial credit can still add up to a lot of points. Next, I'm going to talk about this mission here. If any of you competed last year in Nature's Fury, you'll remember the airplane mission. This mission is very similar. You can see there's a little image here out of Lego blocks. There is a wire that runs along the wall here and down, and you can see it connecting to this mission model. What you have to do here is use your robot to pull this lever out, just like that. When you do that, it will pull this rope and raise the screen up. They've already released a clarification on this. It does not matter if the element itself does not work properly. It does not matter if the screen goes up. All you have to do is grab this lever here and pull it out, and you get full credit for the mission regardless of anything else that happens. So don't worry if the model element doesn't function properly every time. Alright, next I will talk about this model here. This is our robotics competition model, aptly named. You can see that it also has a loop in it. In base there is a data card, this little object right here with the red, yellow, and blue on it. What you have to do is load that onto the robot, take it out here, and it sockets into the model itself right here, and that will release the loop. To get points, you have to deliver the data card, put it inside the robotic arm, release the loop, and make sure the loop is not touching the robot arm. You can retrieve that loop and use it for points over here if you choose to do so. Just remember, make sure the loop is not touching the robot arm itself when you're finished with this mission. This mission is called Changing Conditions. It's a relatively simple mission. All you have to do is have your robot push the arm 90 degrees counterclockwise. Pretty simple. It'll rotate right around. Next, I will talk about this mission. This is one of the more interesting missions this year. This wall, though you can't see it from this overhead view, actually has sockets, little holes. Your challenge here is to build a key that will socket into that properly, and once it does so, once you push it in, it will raise this blue object right here, and you will receive points for it. There is no restriction on how you build your key. You can build it out of any of your NXC, EV3, any Lego parts you have, anything that will fit through there and raise that lever. The idea here is to actually examine how the model works and learn to build a key that will trigger it. This model right here is called Community Learning. It's pretty simple. You can see there's a loop here vertically. All you have to do is come over and pull that loop out. Just like all the others, you can bring it over here and put it on the hook for extra points. When you pull that loop up, these walls will come down and collapse the model, and you will see full credit. Here we have another model called Thinking Outside the Box. Right at the top here, you can see a little lifting handle. What you have to do is probably pick this model up in some way, knock it over, something like that, to knock out the little card that's inside. There's a little card in here with a light bulb on it. Knock this box over, pick it up, whatever you can do to get that light bulb out of the box. This is another example of partial credit. You get partial credit just for getting the light bulb out of the box. If you land it with the light bulb facing up, you get extra points on this mission. So remember that. Try and get the light bulb facing up if you can. All right. Over here in this white circle, you will use these two Lego minifigurines right here. This is called the apprenticeship mission. What you have to do for this mission is build your own Lego platform, your own Lego model, and attach these two apprentice figurines to it and deliver it out here. Let me know if you guys have any questions on that, because a lot of these missions that I saved for later are more complicated. You build your own Lego platform, attach the figurines to it, and take it out here, put it somewhere inside this white circle. Doesn't have to be completely in. As long as it's a little tiny bit inside that white circle, you get full scoring credit. Now let's see, which ones haven't I talked about? This up here in the top right corner is called reverse engineering. This is another tricky one. You'll see these loose parts here in base. You get 2 sets of these loose parts. What you have to do is assemble them in some way, make some model, some figure out of them, and place that model inside your box. You take your box and put it on the other team's field. They take their box and put it on your field. You have to reverse engineer this figure, which means you have to go out, pick up this basket, bring it back to base. Then you have to look inside and see what the other team built. Then you have to use your pieces to duplicate it as closely as possible. And if you build the same thing the other team did, then you get full credit for this mission. Like I said, let me know if anything is unclear, if you have any questions about any of this. This mission right here is one of the most interesting missions of this competition season. It's called engagement, and it's kind of like getting engaged with your learning, your schoolwork, or anything else, any other way you learn. It's similar to the Nature's Fury and the Senior Solutions missions with a rotating lever. What you have to do, you can see the arms right here. You spin those arms around and a pointer will raise the more you spin that. The further along you get that lever by spinning that arm, you get a multiplier for your score. Not just flat points, but you actually get your existing score multiplied the further you move this arm. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But be aware of that, because it's a really interesting element. If you don't get a lot of points, it might not be worth your time to bother with this. But if you've got a high score already and you get a multiplier, you're going to have an even higher score. Over here we have a model that's called using the right senses. This one is pretty simple. All you've got to do is push this slider in, just kind of ram it with your robot or an arm. It will release this loop. You can pick it up and take it over here and put it on the arm. And remember, this project learning is its own mission. You don't have to take the loops over there. You just get points if you do. To complete this, all you've got to do is pull the loop away from this model. And I think our last mission over here is called a search engine. This one's kind of tricky. You're definitely going to have to use some sensors and some careful planning. What happens is you have to push this lever right here. When you do, it causes this wheel to spin and select a color. It can select yellow, blue, or red randomly. And then you have to pull out the correct loop. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. You can have your robot go out and push the lever and then use sensors to pick up what color is selected and then pull the correct loop. You can have your robot go out, push the lever, and come back and then select a new program for the red loop, blue loop, or yellow loop. Or you can select one program for a certain loop and have the robot keep pushing the lever until you get the loop you want. So think about your strategy and the different ways you can approach this. I think I've covered everything in base here. Here is your card for the robotics arm. Here are your pieces for the reverse engineering basket, your figures for the apprenticeship mission, the ball to be launched into the goal or at the goal. There's a loose loop. You can just pick that right up and deliver it directly over. And these little black and gray pieces right here are your penalty blocks. Unlike last year, they won't be placed in your way or anything like that. If you take a touch penalty, the judge will put them somewhere out here on the board out of your way. All right, I'm going to move on, talk a little bit about your strategy. Just a couple hints and things to be aware of, things you might be able to take advantage of. One of the most important things that I tell all the teams, read the rules carefully. I think we may have just lost Amy. Oh, she's back. All right, fantastic. All right, read the rules carefully. If the rules don't say that it's forbidden, then it's fair game, and you can do it and receive full credit. FLL encourages loopholes. It encourages you to think outside the box in very creative ways. So think of ways that you can get around the rules to do something easier or better. When I was using activities to show kids how this worked, one of the activities that we do is that we build towers out of pasta and marshmallows. And you use the marshmallow to stick the pasta together, and you try and get the tallest tower possible. And this was actually during an FLL training camp. One of the teams actually came up with a great idea. Now remember, the rules were that you had to use the pasta and the marshmallows to try and build the tallest tower. That was the only rule I gave them. A lot of the teams made boxes or some kind of tower structure, and they had problems with it falling over, just different things like that. One group in particular attached all their pasta together in one long string. There's no way it would stand up on its own. But right before time ran out, they started licking their marshmallows and stuck a big glob of marshmallow on the end of the pasta and stuck it right to the wall. It was a great creative idea. It wasn't exactly in the spirit of the challenge, but it didn't violate the rules either. So if you can come up with an idea that meets the criteria and isn't against the rules in any way, then go for it. FLL rewards creative thinking. Like I said before, pay attention to your color identification. It's absolutely critical on this year's map, identifying the mission models and navigating on those colored lines. One particular thing to keep in mind is that there is no limit on how many sensors you can attach to that robot. I know most of the kits only come with one, but they're very cheap on eBay. You might be able to find them on Amazon, places like that. Just something to consider to expand your strategy a little bit. Like I said before, pay attention to partial credit. Read through the rules carefully. Even if you don't think you can reliably accomplish a difficult mission, you still might be able to get a lot of points just by getting easy partial credit. So think about that. In particular this year, a lot of the models actually changed the field. They changed the way you can move around. Things like opening and closing the door, launching that ball out onto the table, moving the arm on changing conditions. All of these things will change the paths you can take. So think about what order you want to do these missions in. If it's going to block your path, make sure you've got everything done on that area before you do that mission. Some easy scoring tips and some other things to keep in mind. The apprenticeship mission is very unique in that it's basically free points. Remember, like I said, on the apprenticeship mission, you have to build your own Lego model and bring it to the table with you and put those Lego figures on it. You get partial credit for this mission just by bringing your model to the table. There is really no reason why any team should not get these free points. All you've got to do is build that model and bring it to the table, and you get partial credit at least. So keep that in mind. Very easy points. Like I said on the sports mission, try and take a shot at least. Even if you don't make it into the goal, you still get a lot of points just for trying. The engagement wheel has diminishing returns. Basically what that means is the more you turn it, the less of a bonus you get. But the first time you turn it, you get a 10% score bonus, which is pretty important. So I would try and at least turn it one time so you can get a 10% bonus to your final score. Spend a lot of time practicing your navigation. Even if you're not actively trying to do a mission, learn how your color sensor or your light sensor works, because it's going to be very important that you can squeeze through those gaps perfectly to line yourself up. You can look at the table and see that many of the missions have colored lines that go right to them or that help you line up. There aren't any conflicting colors. There are a lot of different helpful colors that make this easy to navigate around. So make sure you practice that. It's going to be a very critical skill this year. Alright, moving on, I'm going to talk a little bit about our core values here. It's very important that you don't neglect your core values or any one aspect of your season, because you can't get the Champions Award in first place unless you score well in every area. So make sure that you do pay attention to even your core values, your project, and your robot design. Don't just focus on building a robot on the table. One thing we always encourage teams to remember is gracious professionalism. This is a great season for cooperation amongst the teams. So remember, you've all got common problems. Talk to the other teams, treat them respectfully, and see if you can help them out and see if they can help you out. Share ideas. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a great opportunity to meet some of the other FLL teams around here and see what they're doing and get some feedback. Like I was talking about cooperation, everyone has a different learning style. The other teams might have a project idea or a robot games idea that is completely different from anything you might have thought of. You might be able to learn from them, and they might be able to learn from you. So don't be afraid to reach out to them and see what they're doing and see what they think. Get some feedback on what you're doing. It'll really help you out. On a similar note, remember that you guys might be kids, but when you're in FLL, you're professionals. There are a lot of other professionals out there that can help you and that might be very interested in what you're doing. We're talking a lot about education this year, so reach out and get involved with members of your community. Talk to your principal. Talk about local educational professionals, people who work at businesses, people that teach other skills, people that host professional development events. Go out and do your research and see who is out there, and just really put your information and your team out there and get involved with everyone. I think you guys will be a better team for it, and they might learn something from you guys too. Always remember to represent your team well, even if it's not at a tournament, even if you're out in the community, if you're meeting with a professional in your school. Remember that you guys have an opportunity to both get your team name out there and to show yourselves positively. So always try and have fun. Always try and be respectful. Always have a positive attitude. Always be learning and always be teaching. It looks really good on your team, and it's really helpful over the course of the season and at our tournaments. And remember that when you're at our tournaments, always remember that someone is watching, the public and our judges. We always employ what we call field observers, people that actually go out in plain clothes and just watch the team, see how you're doing. Because we know that we can't get a full picture of your team from a 15-minute judging session. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to be fighting on the field. You don't want to have a negative attitude. We want to see teams that are enthusiastic and they're having a lot of fun in FLL. So you never know if that person who's watching your team compete is taking pictures for the news because they think your team is cool and they want to learn more about you, or because they're one of our judges that's writing notes for a scorecard. So just keep that in mind and always try and have fun and show your best to everyone around you. Talking a little bit about our judging session for core values. It is a judged event and it is worth 25% of your final score. So remember that. It's very important. There will be a team judging activity. Now I can't tell you what it is because it's a surprise. We want to see how well you work together as a team under pressure. We're going to present you with some kind of surprise challenge, and it's not necessarily important that you complete it or that you have a great idea. It's important that you work well together. We want to see how well you guys come together under pressure. Do you incorporate everyone's ideas? Do you treat each other respectfully? Are you a good, solid, positive team? That's what's going to help you score well in your core values judging session. I always encourage teams to use a lot of teamwork activities. If you go online or ask teachers, people like that, they will always have team building activities, like I talked about with the marshmallows and the pasta. And they're great ideas to practice building teamwork, coming together as a team. I like to use timed activities because they add a little bit of stress, and you learn to deal with those nerves. They also provide inspiration when your team needs a break. If your team is feeling burnt out, or if they just need a break from a difficult task, maybe take a break and do one of these team building activities. See what you can find on the internet. It really helps to come back with a fresh perspective. And you can get some great engineering ideas by doing all these different challenges. So sometimes just take a break and walk away from a difficult challenge and come back to it with a fresh perspective. It can be very helpful sometimes. All right, now you're going to notice something in particular about this particular slide. Right up here at the top, I have some very large, bold red letters. One of the challenges we face with our judging is that most tournaments don't have a standardized judging format. Something might be required at one tournament and not even involved at another. So what I'm recommending to our judges this year is that we use what I'm calling a recommended system. None of these recommended things are going to be required, so you're not going to be kicked out or anything like that if you can't do this or if you choose not to do this for some reason. But again, there are reasons why I put it in very large, bold red text. These recommended things are what we're looking for, what we hope to see from everyone. It's a good, effective format. There's nothing wrong if you think you can do it a better way that's different, but this is a tried and true method that's required at a lot of world level events and things like that, so it's a good idea. We don't necessarily want you to reinvent the wheel. This is a good format that we would like to see the team start using, and you'll see this a couple more times throughout the presentation here. This is called a trifold core values poster, and some of you might be familiar with it already. You can see that there are 5 areas here for the different areas of the core values, and it's pretty open-ended to what you can put in these areas. We want to see examples of how you incorporate them into your team. What did you discover this year? How did you integrate everyone's ideas into the teams? How did you cooperate with the other teams even though you're competing with them? Things like that. You can use notes, you can print off quotes, you can use pictures, whatever you want to do. It's very open-ended. But this is a very good, effective way of getting your team's personality and values across to the judges. So that's why we recommend it. If you'd like a full guide on making a poster that's been used before, you can find it at the link I provided here. This was actually required at the 2012 World Tournament, so it's kind of a great standard. It's been used in FLL a lot, and that's why we use it. So you can go here and see exactly how it's done if you'd like some more specific instructions. A couple useful hints on core values throughout the season. Something that I've seen a lot of teams doing is to make a classroom core values poster. Have your team research the core values and figure out what they are and what they mean. Come up with some kind of poster to put up in your classroom. That way, if you see an example of this core value being used or done in the classroom, you can look at the poster and it will remind you that, hey, we did use this core value. This is how we used it. In the core values judging session, they're going to ask you for examples of how you use these. So if you get used to doing this throughout the season, you'll have a lot of stories ready to go when they ask for examples. This is another example that a lot of teams choose to do. Kind of like I was talking about with the core values poster, this is a sample area that they use throughout the season to keep track of their core values and how they demonstrate them. You can make a simple area. You can see this is a post-it note sample here. Each one of the areas is represented by different colored sticky notes. If someone demonstrates a core value, you can write that example down and stick it right here on the board, and it'll be a great reminder so that when you need to make your final trifold poster, you have all of this sorted and ready. All of the hard work is done for you. You can just look at this and you're pretty much ready to go. You just make kind of a final format and you're done. This is also really helpful for memorizing the categories of core values because you're constantly looking at them, you've got them color-coded, and you're also adding examples all the time. So it just really helps to kind of memorize things as you go along. I know a lot of teams probably don't study up on the core values. They probably don't do very well in their core values judging session because they don't remember what they are, what they mean, and doing something like this over the course of the season can really reinforce what the core values are and what they mean. It's a great study habit to get into. There are a lot of different examples you can do of this. You can see they use the color-coded sticky notes. Here's another example. This is just a large sheet of paper that's hung up in the classroom, and they write down different examples of things they have done that incorporate the core values. It's a little bit less pretty. You might be able to use markers or some kind of colored ink to color code it, which again helps memorization. But this is a little bit sturdier. You don't have to worry about losing sticky notes. So you can use either approach, whatever works best for you. And here's an example of a very strong, finished trifold core values poster. There are a lot of things I like about this. You can see he's got all of the different core values areas. There are a lot of pictures of his team that demonstrate the core values in use, and a very nice final touch that he used. You'll notice his team outfit is color-coded to match his trifold poster. It's a great idea. It really makes your team memorable. you want your team to stick in the mind of the judges. Make sure you include your team name and a team mascot if you've got one. All of these little touches make a very good, fleshed out core values poster that tells the judges everything they need to know about your team in a very effective and memorable way. So again, perfect example of what we would like to see. A team that knows their core values and has a core values board just like this. Pretty much perfect. Moving on, we're going to talk about the project and presentation. I think we have a lot of great opportunities this year, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the teams come up with. As usual, there are some requirements. Again, bold red letters for a reason. You must come up with a research question. In the past, the FLL has referred to it as identifying a problem. This year, they're very specific. Come up with a research question. Come up with your question, and then create an innovative solution that addresses your question. Finally, sharing your research is a huge part of the project this year, much more than in past years. So make sure you come up with some good ideas on how to share it. Now I'm going to give you some more information on what a research question is, what your topic is, what the project actually means this year. So the first thing you want to do is identify your topic. A topic is any type of skill, any type of information that a person could possibly learn. It's very open-ended and completely up to you what topic you choose. You can choose to do a topic that is very broad, like math or physics or science, or it can be something very narrow, like fractions. You can do a very traditional topic, like science, or you can do something completely unusual or off the wall, like dog walking. It's totally up to you. Your topic can be something that's taught in schools, something that you need in life, like reading, or it can just be something that your team is interested in, like video game design. It doesn't matter. Completely up to you and completely open-ended. So I would recommend coming up with a lot of different ideas and seeing which one your team really wants to teach. Which one are you really interested in? When you've got your topic decided, your research question should look like this. How can we improve the way someone learns about dog walking or math? Up to you, but that's the format you should use. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys decide to teach this year. And remember, it's not necessarily about teaching it, but it's about improving the way someone learns. That could be developing an entirely new teaching method, incorporating something from a different discipline, or just improving the system that we use. When you're creating an innovative solution, one of the first steps that you should do is figure out how people learn about it right now. If you're going to teach people how to learn better about math, then talk to a math teacher. Figure out how a subject is taught. Or if you're going to teach about video game design, get in touch with someone who teaches that discipline. Find someone who is a professional that can tell you what teaching methods are used right now. And you can get a lot of great information from them that will really help you. You can figure out how effective are their teaching methods. What ideas do they have? What do they think about your ideas? So, again, reach out to other professionals. They can really help you out. This is a great opportunity. Figure out how a subject is taught and how people learn about it, what tools they use, what conditions apply, and then apply your research question. Now that we know a lot about dog walking, how can we improve the way someone learns about it? Keep in mind, again, this is a very broad challenge topic. There are a lot of different ways you can improve the way someone learns. You can make it easier to learn. I'm sure a lot of you guys think math is not very easy to learn. There are a lot of other topics that are difficult too. So you could just make it easier to learn. You could make it more fun to learn, more effective, or more memorable. All of these things are important and are perfectly valid for your topic. Memorization is important, and having fun is important too. Just like the engagement model on the Robot Gamers board, if you're involved and interested, you're going to have a much more effective time learning a new skill or idea. So remember all these different ways and think about how you can incorporate one or all of them into your project. The other side of that is think about your audience. It's a major part of this challenge. There are a lot of different ages, a lot of different locations. Some people have different financial situations. Some people live in completely different cultures. And of course there are special situations too. There's no one fix for a problem, so you've got to consider a lot of different factors. To give you a little more detail, think about different age groups. A lot of you grew up with iPhones and video games and things like that. There's a broad stereotype that says older folks, senior citizens, have a very difficult time learning about technology. Likewise, kids, young people, might have a very difficult time learning out how to fill out tax forms and things like that. So think about how the group's age is going to be a factor. If you choose to teach dog walking, is that going to be different depending on if the person is young or old? You're going to have to consider how it all applies. And again, different locations. Teaching someone to drive in America is going to be very different from teaching someone to drive in Japan or England or India. So the location is a major factor. There's no one fix. Just remember to think about it. Different finance levels. A solution that involves robots and advanced technology is great, but if you're appealing to a large audience, remember there's probably going to be a lot of people who can't afford to buy a new $500 robot to walk their dog. Cultures are also a factor. This ties into locations a little bit, but remember there are a lot of different cultures just here in America. My example here is Japan. Japan is a very different culture. Teaching someone to properly wear a traditional kimono is a big deal over there, but the terminology might be completely different. If you try and tell someone how to tie a proper Nagoya obi, that's not going to mean anything to someone in America who doesn't know what that is. So remember the terminology and think about how you might have to break it down and explain it. There are a lot of special situations. Think about a student who has trouble reading or has trouble with math or something like that. The simple solution might be able to send them to tutoring or a special class. But a lot of people who have problems like that don't want to go to things like that because they think there's a stigma there. They don't want people to know they have trouble reading. So is that going to be a factor with your project? What other problems might you encounter? Lots of things to think about as you flesh out your project over the season. Share your research. When you're coming along with your project, think about who it involves. There's going to be a wide difference in your audience if you're teaching dog walking as opposed to math or video game design, just as examples. So figure out who is going to benefit the most and get in touch with them. And remember to act as professionals and share your idea with as many people as possible every opportunity you get. Think of it as practice. It'll really help you when you're doing your presentation in front of our judges. Go to other teachers in your school. Go to churches or Boy Scout organizations. Go to your principal. Do your project presentation for these people. Reach out to other educators too. Now is a great time to be involved in education because we're working with the new science standards, the Common Core standards. Find out who is developing those and see what they have to say about developing new educational systems. Just get your information out there and practice as much as possible. Some hints. A lot of these are based on things I saw in the projects last year and some other things I picked up just from doing my own research. Obviously, make sure your entire team is involved in some way. Something that will kill your project very quickly is if you have a couple team members that do nothing but stand in the background and hold signs or things like that. Make it interesting. Have fun. Keep everyone involved and positive. We don't want to see team members standing around being bored. Very important. Again, reasons why it's in red text. Make sure the judges know what you're talking about. If you spend the first 5 minutes of your presentation talking about how hard it is to teach dogs, how hard it is for them to learn new tricks, and then near the end you explain you have a new idea for how to dog walk, judges aren't going to have any idea what you're talking about for the first part of your presentation. So as soon as possible, let them know what your research question is. You want them to be able to follow what you're talking about, and they're going to be confused and not be able to do that if you don't get your question out there very quickly. Just like I was talking about before, include as much information as possible. Let the judges know that you've thought about all these different factors. Who is your target audience? If you don't have a target audience, how is it going to apply to different groups? What would it cost to implement your solution? How difficult would it be? If you're talking about hosting an after-school program, that might be somewhat simple. If you're talking about posting information online, pretty easy. If you're talking about redesigning the educational core standards and getting them accepted on a nationwide level, that might be a little harder. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just show the judges that you've thought about it and understood it. Make sure, of course, that you keep a list of everyone you've shared your information with, and maybe some notes on the feedback you got. By showing the judges that you have shared your research with all these different groups, it will definitely help your score. Something that I always recommend teams doing if they can is to have some kind of brochure or handout. You have a very limited amount of time to communicate your information and do your presentation. Sometimes it's good to have a little bit of extra information that isn't important enough for your presentation itself, but that the judges might want to know. Maybe some statistics or other demographics on the research you've done, little tidbits. You can hand them this brochure, and it'll give them a little time after you've left the room to get some bonus points in. So it's a very good idea to consider if you can. Like I was talking about, incredibly important is to practice and rehearse your performance. A major weakness that I've seen with a lot of teams is that they don't spend enough time practicing. It is important to do your research and to figure out your project and things like that. But remember, you're doing a presentation. You need to be able to present and make it a strong, smooth, professional presentation. Very often I see teams go in and they stutter, they use cue cards and things like that, and it just doesn't look good as a team. It's not smooth. So remember, practice and rehearse at least a couple times. When you come into our judging room, it should not be the first time you're doing your presentation. Take advantage of all the people you can get a hold of. Tell your principal to come in and watch you perform. Tell other parents to come in and watch you perform. Just make sure to practice. You will be much smoother and much stronger if you have your lines memorized, if you have some time to do it a couple times and get the nerves out. It will be a much smoother performance, and you will get a much higher score. Remember, practice, rehearse, and be professional. Really focus on your communication skills. This is another big problem that I see even with adults. I've had communication training, and I can tell you what to look out for. You will be much stronger as a presenter if you watch your dialogue and your body language. Don't be fidgeting. Watch the words that you use. Don't repeat yourself. Things like and like. You don't want to be talking to a judge and kind of stuttering in your speech. It always wants to be very smooth. If you try and have a conversation with the judge and you say something like, hello, my team is the Challenger team, and well, like, we wanted to do this project, but we weren't sure how to do it, so like we just kind of winged it. I think we come up with a really great idea, but I hope you like it. You want to avoid speech like that. Avoid words like and like, and avoid that stuttered tone. Practice, get it smooth and professional. And whatever you do, try to avoid using cue cards. They don't look professional, and they give the appearance that your team has not practiced as much as they should. And of course, make sure that your project is fun and memorable. We always like seeing high energy performances because they are easier to remember. They do stick in the judge's mind. And that's what you want. At the end of the day, we have a discussion session where we talk about which team had the highest score, which team deserves extra awards and things like that. And we want to remember your team. We want to know that this team had a great performance. We remember your team name, your team number, and everything you did. So keep it fun, exciting, interesting, and memorable. The robot design session. I think this is another session where last year a lot of people didn't really know what to expect, and I definitely want to avoid doing that this year. So we've really redesigned the process. The one thing I want to communicate before we get started is why we have a robot design session. When the first LEGO League was founded, when it began, they specifically decided to have a design session to reinforce the strong communication skills that an engineer needs. You've really got to be able to provide a lot of information on your robot, and you've got to be able to sell the design. That's what it's all about going into this robot design session. Know your robot and sell it to the judges. Think about a door-to-door salesman who has this product, and they have to go to someone they've never met before. They have to be able to tell that person everything about it and why they should buy it. And that's exactly what you guys need to do here. Think about your robot's design, how you built it, and your strategy on the robot games table. The judges need to know that you've really thought about everything and you've covered all your bases. You will be required to demonstrate your robot on the games table. We're requesting each team select one program to demonstrate, and we're going to give you 3 attempts to do so. We do want to see at least this one selected program. If we have time and you choose to, we might ask you, or you may choose, to demonstrate some other programs. But try and keep your performance balanced. Remember to incorporate your strategy in your design and focus on one strong program. Now, again, you see the big red recommended letters. This is not a requirement, but our judges will be looking for it because it is a great way of showing what you've done over the course of a season. We're going to be looking for what's called an engineering journal. And this is very open-ended. You can maintain it any way you want to. It can be as big or as small, as casual or as professional as you want it to be. We're also going to be asking for a robot design executive summary. I call it an RDES for short. We're going to ask that you put that in a folder and leave it with the judges so they can review it. I'm going to give you a little more information about all of this here in just a minute, so don't worry about it if it's unclear at the moment. Your RDES should be a folder. Make sure that you put your team name and your team number on it. You can include a picture of your team or a picture of your robot if you'd like. The important thing is that inside that folder, we want at least one full page describing your robot. What does it look like? Why did you build it that way? What cool traits or functions does it have? We also want to include 3 program samples. Print those out. Try and make sure that you describe them on your paper and provide appropriate comments on the program printout itself. And I can send out some examples so you know exactly what we're looking for. But remember, try and prepare an executive summary, at least one full page describing your robot with 3 program printouts. And one of those programs can be the program you demonstrate. A couple of useful hints in the robot design session. Make sure you introduce yourselves. That's something that I see a lot of teams not doing, and it will really help your score if you do. The judges are going to want to know who to talk to. They may ask you about coding. Who did the code for your team? Who built your robot? If you introduce yourselves, you make a great first impression. So try and remember to do this. By doing that, you also let the judges know who was responsible for what, and that you are a strong and professional team. That way, when they need information later, they know just who to ask. You might even have one person to memorize everyone's names and roles, and have that person take the lead and introduce everyone, just to keep it clean and smooth. Very important not to be passive during your robot design session. The judges are going to ask questions, but that doesn't mean you have to let them control the session or come up with all sorts of off-the-wall things to ask. Remember, you're a door-to-door salesman here and you want to sell your robot. Tell them all the cool things about your robot up front. Be ready to answer their questions. Tell them why your robot is the best robot, why your robot is cool, why it's good on the robot table. Tell them why you chose a certain strategy on the robot games. Just communicate clearly and be upfront. Don't be passive. Don't wait for the judges to take control. You keep control of the judging session. That way, instead of the judges asking difficult questions, you're telling them about all the cool stuff your robot can do. Again, this is another great opportunity to rehearse. Just like you did with the project, go out, talk to your principal, other adults, whoever you can find, and have a robot design session with them. Bring them into your work area if you can. Show them your robot. Describe your robot. Tell them what it does and how it works. If you can tell your principal and all these other adults how it works, you'll get much better at explaining it during our judging session. Always remember to have a detailed and professional answer. For example, if I'm working with a team and I see they've just put new wheels on their robot, I might ask them, why did you choose to put those larger wheels on there? A lot of teams will respond with something like, well, we thought these larger wheels would really help us on the robot game table. Judges hate answers like that because it doesn't tell them anything. There is no useful information in that response. If a judge asks you, why did you put larger wheels on your robot? Why did you use larger wheels? Have an answer ready. Say something like, well, we were having trouble with a particular area on the games table. We thought that if we had larger wheels, we would have better grip or better traction and would be able to overcome that challenge easier. We actually did some testing, and we did find that these larger wheels work much better than our previous model. That's a great answer because it tells us why you chose to do it in the first place, how it worked out, and all of the other information that we need. So Give us some detailed, thought-out answers. Don't just say, it made our robot better, or, well, we don't really know. Have a detailed, professional answer. One thing I always suggest to all the teams is, as much as you can, or maybe at the end of every practice, get your robot out and go over any changes you made. Because I know your robot changes a lot over the season. So if you add new wheels or a new arm, talk amongst yourselves. Talk to your coach or whoever else is available and talk about why you made these changes. Get in the habit of giving good answers. A lot of the time teams will talk amongst themselves and you kind of know what you're talking about. You get in the habit of just giving short, simple answers. Don't develop these bad habits. Remember to talk to adults and talk like professionals. Good, detailed information. And remember to include your strategy and thought processes. It's not just about your robot. Remember to include the robot games table, why you chose certain paths or attempted certain missions. You can also talk about your scoring strategy, why you chose to do a certain mission over a different mission. Some information about your journal. I've got a couple of pictures that'll be good examples for you to use in just a moment. Your journal is a handwritten log of everything you do over the course of the season. You can use a large scientific journal, a binder, whatever you want to do. It's completely up to you guys. We're not looking for something that's black and white scientific research. It should be fun. Make it memorable. You can add notes, sketches, to-do lists, sketched out designs, anything you want. Make sure to add some pictures. Maybe put your team name, team number, and a picture of your team on the front cover. Whatever you want to do. If you do choose to put your team on the front cover, make sure that you dress up in the same outfit you're going to wear when you actually come to our tournament. That will make your team much more memorable to our judges. We want to make sure, if you do bring us a journal, make sure it's real information. We don't want to see something you printed off from Wikipedia or something that's typed up and perfect. We want to see everything your team did along the season. And we know a lot of that's going to be scribbles and rough notes and all sorts of things. And that's what we want to see. It's not all about a final finished product. We want to see what mistakes you made, what your early designs were, and how you changed over the course of the season. All of this shows us how you've grown. If you present something that's typed out with no mistakes and just include your final design, we don't get to see any growth, and that's what we're looking for. So remember, try and keep a good journal, take some notes as you go along, tell us all about your early designs and how you changed. Try and remember to date your entries and to use page numbers, because those are both great indicators of how much time has passed. If you do it properly, we should be able to look at your journal and look at everything you did over the course of a month and see all the changes you made and what you worked on. And that's great and will really help your score. And finally, when you do finalize your journal and bring it to our tournament, maybe consider using some tabs or some kind of organizers to highlight important information. If there are pictures of an early model of your robot, stick a tab on there and tell the judges about it so they can flip to it and they'll get that information. The worst possible thing you can do is not demonstrate your design. That's the lowest category, is 0 on our scoring rubric, which I hope you look at. Make sure you demonstrate all aspects of your robot. Don't let something cool slip under the rug because the judge didn't know to ask about it. They're not going to be familiar with your robot. They're not going to know how your cool robot arm works or what cool attachments you've got. So speak up. Tell them all about the important things, both in your journal and on your robot and in your strategy. Tell them all about it. Because if they don't know to ask, you're not going to get credit for it. Here's a couple design journal examples that I'm going to go through very quickly. And I'll give everyone a copy of the PowerPoint so you can see exactly how all this works. This is a First Tech Challenge, a high school level journal. This is a little more professional than what we're expecting from most of the FLL teams. If you choose to do something like that, it's great, but you don't have to. We're not going to take points away if you bring it in a binder or something colorful with stickers on it. That's fine. You can see here they've made a list of the tasks they wanted to accomplish and what happened during the session. They also have lots of notes, a couple pictures of the things they were doing. It's a great journal page. We can learn a lot of information just from this page. Also, date and time of the meeting and what the meeting was about. Here's another sample page in a similar format. You can see lots of sketches and designs. We love things like this. It shows you different thought processes. Here is a handwritten journal. Looks great. Again, we're not necessarily expecting something so clean, clear-cut from our FLL teams. This is high school level. You will notice they use tabs and organizers, and it's just got a lot of great notes, ideas, and some sketches and things there. That's really what we want to see, just something like this. Another example here, you can see they've actually got some pictures of their robot inside with some notes and sketches on how everything works. Another great example. All right, almost finished. Here is a list of some really useful links. The top one here is a brainstorming guide when you're trying to come up with a topic. This just might help you along. It's a great way of listing all the different ideas you have, where you found them, some environmental information that might help you choose and work on your project. They actually have a PDF, which is the topic guide. It has lots of good information on this year's project and presentation if you want to check that out. Here is our coach's handbook. It's a handy PDF format. If the coach wants to take a look at that, if you're confused about what's required or just need some information, that's a great place to start. Here is a link to the official FLL forums. If you ever have any questions about what you need to do or just want to see what other teams are doing, you can go right on these forums and talk to all the other teams. It's a great place to get clarifications and to share information and just talk and meet the other teams. Right here is a link to team resources. Lots of good things on here, some how-tos. There are some webinars, which are a lot like this. They cover a lot of different things like education. They have some advice for new teams, just a wealth of things. You might want to take a look at those or assign a team member to go through and pick out some important things to research. Finally, we've got some challenge resources down here. Lots and lots of things that are designed to help you do better in this year's challenge. There's way too many to talk about, so again, take a look at them if you'd like. This is something that I think is worth looking at. It's called a team information sheet. It has areas for you to talk about your team, what you did with the project, what you did with your robot design, just lots of different things. You may want to consider taking a look at this and printing out copies for each of your judging sessions. It'll really help the judges get to know you, and it's something you can leave with them to remind them of who you are. When our judges are discussing the awards at the end of the day, the more you can do to make them remember you, the better. And finally, what may be the most important link on here is our judging rubrics. This is what our judges use to score. So if you want to know how you're going to be graded and what you're going to be graded on, click this link right here. It takes you straight to those score sheets. Use these. Print them out. Keep them handy in the classroom. When you do a test run of your presentation, have someone grade you on the rubric to see how you did. That way you know what to work on and what to improve, and what you're not demonstrating, because remember, we want to avoid those. So those rubrics are a major help, and I definitely encourage you to check them out. Just a final couple hints that I think will help you along. Make sure to share your work. Think about lots of different ways to do that. There was a great example of a team that made brochures about their team, little snippets about who their team was, where they were from, what they did with the project, and they actually brought those to the regional event and handed those out to the public. And I think that's a great idea. And it doesn't have to be a tournament. You can hand them out around your school, at parks or churches. Just get the word out about your team. Build a positive reputation. I think it will really help you out and be good for you. Plus, it helps get a little publicity. You might find some people who are interested in helping your team out. This year is a great challenge because it gives you an opportunity to learn about the different styles of learning. Some people learn by listening to lectures or reading. Some people learn by doing things hands-on. There are lots of different ways to learn, and you can all learn about this and apply it to all the different aspects of the challenge, especially your project. So think about how you can incorporate all those different styles. Kind of like what I was talking about before, there are just lots and lots of different ways and places that we learn, and our environment has a lot to do with that. Think about learning in classrooms or out in nature, museums, books, and even YouTube videos. There are lots and lots of different ways to learn. Even when we're doing things like sports or just in the classroom, we're just sitting around at home learning to cook or clean. Lots and lots of different ways we learn. So think about all those when you're deciding on your topic. Another idea to consider, you can mix and match some traditional topics with some very unusual ones. A lot of the skills and things that are interesting, maybe things like sports, do have a lot of math involved in them. How could we use the math to figure out the perfect basketball shot? Or how could we learn about the coordinate pairs that are used to create motion in video games? Just lots of different ways you can kind of mix and match. Speak up and be confident. One of the most important things you can do at our event. Our event judges and referees are volunteers. They have other jobs. They don't have all season to learn the rules like you guys do. So make sure that when you come to our event, you know the rules better than our judges do. If there's a problem, if something is set up wrong on the field, if a judge got your score wrong, anything like that, speak up and let them know. No one's going to be upset. We take all of it very seriously. If you have a concern, speak up and let us know. That's part of being professional, and we will either clarify why we did it that way, or we'll get it taken care of. So just don't be afraid to speak up. And finally, the last thing I've got, kind of a note for our coaches. A lot of coaches kind of take a approach where they don't want to do the work for the students. And that's one of the FLL core values, that students do the work. But we don't want our coaches to misunderstand and think they can't help the team at all. Coaches are facilitators, which means you can absolutely help out your team. There's a good example of this on the FLL forums where a coach was talking about how his team wanted to use power tools to build a wooden model for their project. He didn't want to do that for them because he thought they should do the work. There's another rule that they talk about on the forum called the kids keep all their fingers rule. And basically what that means is, coaches, let your students do the work, but use some common sense and think about it ways you can help them, because we're not going to come down on your team or judge you for helping them out. Help them out in every way you can. You can teach them new skills. You can help them get equipment. You can help them travel or contact other professionals. Facilitate their success. And don't be afraid of helping them. Let them do the work in the robot game and so on, but remember to help them out. Think about when you're getting in touch with these professionals. If an email is coming from a teacher with a .edu address, a lot of these groups will be much more likely to look at it and take it seriously than if it's coming from an email address like videogamer97@gmail.com. Work with your students and kind of combine your efforts. Let them tell you what to type up in an email, or maybe pass it off to them once you've made the initial contact. Do everything you can to facilitate their success. Alright guys, that's everything I can think of to cover. I'm going to open everything up to Q&A now. So if you have any questions, now is the chance. You can post them in the Q&A app on the side using group chat, or just let me know through your mics.
Oh my God.
So I was going to say,
Your question. Amy, Nicole, do either of your groups have questions?
Until we get our team that are still.
Wait a second. Maybe.
I'm sorry, did you have?
Okay.
You're lagging just a little bit.
Yes, I'm too sexy.
There's another class.
Oh, so.
Other class.
sorry, I'm in the way. I'm walking out of
Do no harm to shit. We're kind of stopping.
Here's where I chat. Hang on, right here, right down here. This is the way.
Thank you, Joe.
Guys are very welcome. If you have any questions, you can contact me through the group chat.
Okay, so we are going to practice. Let me make sure.
All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close down the call here. If you have any further questions, feel free to send me an email or get in touch with me anytime.
My face is. If they took a screenshot, they would just see.
I've never seen that.
No.
Yes, I don't know.
Yeah, send it. Keep going. Okay, keep going.
Does he come in here?
I am disconnecting. I will see you all shortly.
Wait, Joe, wait.
Okay.
Attack the first part of my question. I'm going to continue typing.
Okay, can you hear us, Joe?
Yes.
Will be.
Hang on. She's just gonna type it because we're lagging so bad right now.
Hmm?
Go on. The bag.
12 days later.
12 days later.
Say, wow, we.
I was supposed to.
Working hard.
Dad, you get a card. Do you get one? Right.
Come on, baby.
What's this part for?
Okay, so do you see my question?
I do. I'm going to send me an email on that. I don't have a problem with letting you borrow one. Let me use your microphone real quick. Okay. I don't have any problem at all with you borrowing one. You may want to send me an email. Let me know how you prefer to do that. We might be able to ship it out to you, or you might be able to pick it up here. If you have any preference on an NXT or an EV3 model, let me know, because we do have both of those. But I don't see any problem with letting you borrow a robot.
Thanks for your patience, Joe, with all the technology.
Not a problem.
So awkward. Thank you.
All right, finish your conversation.
Actually, do you have any other questions?
I think we're good. I'll send you an email. Thank you so much.
All right, sounds great. I will see you guys in tournament time then.